What's up everybody, D-Man back. Welcome to a brand new video, and today we are going to be doing a Godzilla King of the Monsters Easter eggs breakdown. It's a full movie breakdown actually. Michael Dougherty just jam-packed this movie with references to previous Godzilla movies, references to the Monsterverse, references to a whole bunch of other movies. It's absolutely insane. In fact, it was so insane that I couldn't do this video alone. It was just too much for one person to do. So, in order to solve that problem, this video is being brought to you in association with TitanGoji. Him and I are working together here on these Easter eggs. We have pooled our knowledge, and so he'll be doing half of it, I'll be doing half of it. I got the first half, he's got the second half. So I'm taking you guys through the first 100-something Easter eggs. He's taking you through the last 100-something Easter eggs. Let's run through the Easter eggs and references found in Godzilla King of the Monsters. The Legendary and Warner Brothers logo show images of the old gods. In particular, we see an image of Rodan, Ghidorah, and Behemoth. The music that starts this is very reminiscent of the music that starts the Pacific Rim Uprising soundtrack. Godzilla's classic Toho roar is heard over a black screen before the movie begins. I'm gonna cut in here and say one more Easter egg to add to the list is the movie opens with Godzilla's footsteps followed with a classic Toho Godzilla roar. That's the exact same way that the 54 movie opened, and same with Shin Godzilla, so there's one more to add to the list. The movie opens in 2014. It is set during the Halo jump scene from Godzilla 2014. That gives us a little bit of context as to what's happening here when hashtag rest in peace little Russell, the kid dies. I just had to say that in this video. I just had to get that in there so that we made sure to cover that base before the video ends. Godzilla sports his 2014 design during this flashback. However, the dorsal fins are a little bit more rounded than they were in the 2014 movie. His feet are also a little larger, but it's mostly the same design. It hasn't gone through the full changes that the 2019 design has. He also sports his Godzilla 2014 roar during the flashback as well. During the news reports showing Monarch is being held accountable for their actions, we see footage from 2014. The military is said to be tracking Godzilla and is to blame for the mass amounts of whales dying off. However, this is possibly a hint to the oxygen destroyer being tested, not the military tracking Godzilla. The debate over if Titan should be eliminated or not started back in the 2014 special features and continues into this film. A lot of the shots during these news reports parallel the shots from the start of Kong Skull Island with protests in DC. During the protests, multiple protesters are seen carrying signs that read "Destroy all monsters," a reference to the classic Toho film. Madison is revealed while wearing one of Andrew's old shirts. She is listening to the song Wave of Mutilation by the Pixies. This is similar to the wave of mutilation that will follow Ghidorah's awakening. Rick from Rick and Morty is seen on Madison's computer. Madison is worried that Mark won't be safe. This is our first indication that something is wrong with her. It is a hint to her knowledge of the mass awakening and her doubts about it. She is worried about her father. Mark and Emma Russell are a divorced couple. This is a relationship we saw previously with the main characters from Godzilla vs. Mothra in 1992. There are several main characters named after special effects artists from previous films. Lieutenant Bolton is named after Rob Bolton from King Kong 76. Corporal Winston is named after Stan Winston, who had a lot of involvement with the scrapped American Godzilla film. Sergeant Baker is named after Rick Baker, who played King Kong in 1976. Officer Tippett is named after Phil Tippett. Officer Harryhausen is a clear reference to Ray Harryhausen, who did lots of stop-motion films that inspired all of these movies. The Showa Mothra roar is heard over the forest as Mothra wakes up. Mothra is living in Outpost 61, which is a reference to the original Mothra movie that came out in 1961. We see the SDCC 2017 reveal image of Mothra in the Temple of the Moth. The Shovujin were seen in concept art of the Temple of the Moth. They were seen built into the walls and as hieroglyphics. Millie Bobby Brown is reunited with Randall Havens, a fellow Stranger Things cast member. According to the Monarch timeline, Mothra appears in a chrysalis. That would indicate that she has hatched previously, and it would correlate to the fact that we don't see an egg in this scene, but we do see an egg in the end credits. Mothra appears in an egg-like state, just like how she does in Mothra vs. Godzilla. The Japanese names for the kaiju are used as their scientific designations, while the English names are used as their common names. Mothra's chrysalis makes the same noise as the Muto's cocoon. Monarch having a containment grid and multiple plans to deal with the situation when Mothra hatches is contrasted against the way they were unprepared for the Muto's hatch in 2014. This is explained in-universe as a result of Monarch's new funding. Mothra firing webs out of her mouth is one of her classic Toho abilities. The Orca looks and works just like it does on the real-world Orca website. The Orca is named after the ship from Jaws. Yuji Koseki's Mothra theme is played over the larva's birth. Mothra now has heat vision in this new movie, which is a new power for the character. Mothra's bioluminescence is an indication of her mood. It works the same exact way that baby Godzilla's did back in 1993's Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla. Madison reaching out and touching Mothra is a potential reference to Jurassic Park. Something similar also happens in Kong Skull Island. Footage from both Godzilla 2014 and Kong Skull Island are seen during the Monarch hearings. Monarch's goal is to learn which Titans are good and which are bad, the implication being that both Kong and Godzilla are good while monsters like the Mutos are bad. The monsters are constantly referred to as Titans throughout the film. The use of this name can actually go back to the original drafts of Terror of Mechagodzilla, where there were going to be two dinosaurs named Titans. These dinosaurs were later replaced with Titanosaurus. Titans also ties the monsters back to mythology, with Titans being the things above God in Greek myths. Funny enough, Warner Brothers is actually remaking Attack on Titan, another film with giant monsters called Titans. Ken Watanabe, Sally Hawkins, and David Strathairn all reprise their respective roles as Dr. Serizawa, Dr. Graham, and Admiral Stenz. Ishiro Serizawa's name is a reference to both Japanese director Ishiro Honda, who made the original Godzilla, and Akihiko Harata's character from the original film, Desuke Serizawa. Admiral Stenz wants all the Titans dead, just like he did back in 2014. Serizawa nods to Admiral Stenz as a callback to how they were in a very similar situation just 5 years previous. Serizawa mentions the idea that coexistence is key within this scene, which is a reoccurring motif for his character. Sally Hawkins' character, Dr. Graham, returns, and she mentions the idea of the lion and the mouse as an example of coexistence. This was the same reference that Cole made to Mills back in Kong Skull Island when talking about Kong. Muto reproduction is referenced. It's also a little bit of a joke as to people in the real world always being curious about kaiju genitalia, and clips from Godzilla 2014 are shown. Fun fact here, I'm pretty sure that there are no wild wolves that live in Colorado. I'm pretty sure they were all poached to death, so I have no idea why or how Mark is able to watch and observe a wild pack of wolves in the scene when he does. Kyle Chandler is returning to the kaiju genre after his previous appearance in King Kong 2005. The Ospreys return as Monarch's main form of transportation as seen in Skull Island, The Birth of Kong. Monarch is the biggest thing that ties the Monsterverse together as they research all the Titans. They are the only thing that has appeared in all three Monsterverse films. Mark Russell lives in Tony Stark's cabin from Endgame. Also, the girl who plays Madison Russell in flashbacks was the same girl who played Morgan Stark in Endgame. Emma rebuilt the Orca, which was hinted to in Godzilla Aftershock and confirmed in this movie. The idea that Titans can communicate over long ranges was first brought up by Joe Brody back in Godzilla 2014. The 17 Titans plus Godzilla have been found and added to the Orca. This builds onto the pre-established world of the Monsterverse. Kong is also seen in the Orca. Skull Island is referenced in the scene as they head into Castle Bravo as well. Skull Island is listed as Outpost 33 on the device that Mark Russell is looking through. This is a reference to the fact that King Kong originally came out in 1933. Monarch has a new outpost called Castle Bravo, which is Outpost 54. This is reference to the bomb that inspired the original Godzilla movie back in 1954. Also, Castle Bravo being Outpost 54 is a reference to Godzilla's original release date back in 1954. Castle Bravo is located in Bermuda. We find out later that there is a Hollow Earth entry point right next to it. This may explain the Bermuda Triangle in the Monsterverse. We see the decapitated Fimuto head from Godzilla 2014. Rick says the Titans can be used for multiple different things, including bioweapons, a reference to Biolante's origins. It's said that Mothra could potentially be used for pharmaceutical purposes. This was one of her intended purposes for Mothra vs. Godzilla. Mark refers to the Titans being hidden throughout the world as a magic kingdom of horrors, a reference to the magic kingdom in the real world. Jonah has been said to capture multiple Titans in the past, which explains his actions in both the Monarch timeline and Godzilla Aftershock. Antarctic Outpost 32 is the home of Ghidorah. 32 is half of 64, and 1964 was the release date of Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster. Also, having it be Outpost 32 is a reference to the movie The Thing, where their outpost was Outpost 31. Outpost 31 is also an Antarctic research station that houses a frozen alien. The line stating, "The Mother of God had nothing to do with this being Ghidorah, calls back to the quote, "The devil has three heads." Ghidorah is depicted as the devil in this movie. Ghidorah is also called Monster Zero throughout this film. In universe, it's because he is said to be the oldest Titan, but it's also calling back to Invasion of Astro Monster from 1965 when Ghidorah was given that designation. Ghidorah is frozen in ice, just like in GMK. A pterodon skeleton and a trilopod skeleton are seen built into the walls of Castle Bravo, a reference to both Rodan and the trilopod from Godzilla 1954. There is a wall of fallen Monarch members that doesn't appear in the movie but appears in the set. This wall includes names such as Haruo Nakajima, as confirmed by director Michael Dougherty. It also includes the names of multiple different cast, crew, and characters from Godzilla lore. The intimidation display links Godzilla to a gorilla pounding its chest, which links Godzilla to Kong. Godzilla is smart enough to read our behavior and know when we are threatening him. This builds upon Godzilla's intelligence. The turrets being aimed at Godzilla are masers. A course projection is ran to determine where Godzilla will land next. The same thing was done back in 2014 leading up to the final battle in San Francisco. This is also something that has been done in Godzilla movies as far back as Godzilla vs. Biolante. The Argo jet is very similar to the Super X-3. The ship is named after Jason and the Argonauts. The Hollow Earth and Dr. Brooks are both mentioned. This is a carrier carryover from Kong Skull Island. When images associated with Ghidorah are being loaded onto Monarch's touchscreen table, the image of Godzilla and the Mutos underwater from the Monarch website is seen. The scene where Ghidorah is woken from the ice is very reminiscent of Godzilla's reawakening in Godzilla Final Wars. Biolabs are said to house samples of Ghidorah's DNA. This explains how they were able to carbon date Ghidorah. It also adds to Ghidorah being able to possibly regenerate and return in future movies, and sets up for potential bio wars. An EKG spike is detected before Godzilla's appearance. This suggests that his heart was racing as he entered his first fight with Ghidorah. Ghidorah is seen as very snake-like throughout this movie. His tails are constantly rattling and he is constantly hissing. Ghidorah's wings have a leather-like appearance, which is usually associated with the devil. The disjointed choir during Ghidorah's awakening is symbolic for the disjointed heads and their multiple personalities. Ghidorah's theme is also very reminiscent of King Kong's theme from King Kong vs. Godzilla. As I mentioned, Ghidorah's heads all do have their own personalities. The left head is confirmed to be the curious head. The middle head is said to be the leader, while the right head is angry but cautious. G-Team is dispatched. G-Team is this movie's version of G-Force. Barnes said, "You gotta be fucking kidding." This is the first use of an F-word in a Godzilla movie. It's also a quote from the movie The Thing. "You gotta be fucking kidding." There is a Godzilla 2014 music build-up leading to Godzilla's appearance. In both movies, it plays right before Godzilla's first appearance. Godzilla sports a modern Showa-esque redesign. He has the 1954 spines, he has a much more Showa-like tail, and his feet are much larger. These changes are explained in-universe by Godzilla being said to be evolution in the flesh. They are just natural adaptations for him. Ifukube's Godzilla theme is heard. Godzilla is framed before high-tension wires, just like he was in the 1954 film. Godzilla also feels bigger than he ever has during this sequence. This is the tallest live-action Godzilla to date, ranking in at 119.8 meters tall. He is nearly 400 feet in this film. Godzilla roaring in the moonlight evokes some classic universal horror imagery. Godzilla uses multiple Toho roars throughout this sequence. Both the 54 and standard Toho roar are heard. The 54 roar is heard when Mark Russell is pinned down in the Osprey. The Showa roar is heard when Godzilla is knocked down a pit. An unedited version of the classic Showa roar is heard over the movie's final moments during the Haruo Nakajima tribute in the credits. Dr. Graham is killed and eaten by Ghidorah abruptly. This is a very similar use of the character to what happened with Joe Brody back in Godzilla 2014. Godzilla has a big 2014-esque tail build-up leading to his first use of the atomic breath. Godzilla misses every shot of the atomic breath up until the final battle of the movie. The military is actually seen doing damage to Ghidorah, showing how formidable the Argo is. Ghidorah retreats just like how he does in the Showa era. Godzilla hunts down Ghidorah like how he hunts down the Mutos in the comics. Outpost 56 is a reference to Rodan's first movie, which came out in 1956. Isla de Mara is the setting of the scene. The location was originally set in Isla de Mona, but was changed to Isla de Mara to avoid confusion with the real-life Isla de Mona. The human infection speech combines multiple different allegory from Godzilla history. Footage of both Godzilla 2014 and Kong Skull Island is shown. There's also mentions of the humans using Titans for war. It's a similar idea to the Mecha Titan, aka the Mecha Godzilla idea. Everywhere the Titans have been is now abandoned and overgrown, just like Genjira from Godzilla 2014. The cave paintings from the end of Kong Skull Island are seen again. We see footage of Kong's shrine in Kong Skull Island. Monarch has been preparing for a doomsday scenario for as long as the Godzilla franchise has been running. That's over 60 years. The evacuation scenes are handled with a real-world sense of weight and urgency, grounding Rodan's eruption scene in reality. Emma, going to Alan Jonah willingly, was set up in Godzilla Aftershock. Alan Jonah is an eco-terrorist. Last time we've seen an eco-terrorist in the Godzilla franchise was the Seradian agent in Godzilla vs. Biollante. Rodan's eruption signifies the rebirth of the character. His eruption ties him back to the death of the 56 version of the character, but also his rebirth in 1964. This also ties Rodan to the idea of a phoenix. Michael Dougherty said he likes to think of this Rodan as the child of the previous two Rodans from the original film. However, this is not canon whatsoever. He's also confirmed that the events of the 1956 Rodan are not canon to this film. Rodan is said to possess some variation of his classic roar, however, I failed to hear it every time I've seen the movie. We cut to the perspective of fishing boats during the disaster scene, which returns us to the start start of the franchise. Rodan is very similar to the Fire Rodan version of the character from the 90s. His destruction is handled very similar to how it was in both 1956 and 2004. Rodan earns his title as a flying A-bomb in the scene where he destroys an entire city with one passover. Rodan being involved in an aerial dogfight comes straight out of the 1956 movie. Rodan eating an ejecting pilot out of the air is a recreation of a scene from The Giant Claw. Rodan's barrel roll is very similar to the move he does in Godzilla Total Destruction. However, this does not seem like it was an intentional Easter egg. Rodan vs. Ghidorah ties Rodan back to his 1964 counterpart. The Oxygen Destroyer is seen making a return from the 1954 movie. We also see the original design of the Oxygen Destroyer worked into blueprints of the missile that is fired. Serizawa dies as an indirect result of the Oxygen Destroyer, much like what happens in the 1954 movie. Godzilla coming in last second and rescuing the Argo jet by pulling Ghidorah out of the way is very similar to the iconic T-Rex saving the day moment from Jurassic Park. There is an underwater fight between Godzilla and Ghidorah, which is something that's very rare in Godzilla movies. I don't necessarily think that's an Easter egg, I just think it's worth mentioning. Godzilla bites off Ghidorah's left head, which is something he does in Godzilla Final Wars. Godzilla decapitating Ghidorah also is a callback to his iconic moment from the 1991 film. It's interesting how the fights with Ghidorah seem to follow eras in certain ways, with the first fight paralleling the Showa era slightly, the second fight paralleling the Heisei era slightly, and the third fight paralleling the Millennium fights. Ghidorah's regeneration of his head cements this version of the character as a much more formidable version than his previous incarnations. The Oxygen Destroyer, being seen as a green nuke, ties the weapon back to the fear that the 1954 version of Serizawa had about the same device. A huge green explosion in the distance over water while Charles Dance runs around seems like a potential callback to the Battle of Blackwater. Dead fish float up to the top of the water after the Oxygen Destroyer has been detonated. The Oxygen Destroyer's first use in the franchise was used to kill fish. We see another death of Godzilla in this film. Godzilla is stated to be dead multiple times, even though some people will debate if he actually does die or not, but this does mark one of his deaths in the franchise and also makes his resurrection very similar to what happens in Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 1993.
We see Ghidorah regenerate one of his heads, kind of like a Hydra, but one head just comes out instead of two. As Ghidorah roars at the top of the volcano in Mexico, it summons Titans from outposts 55, 67, 75, and 91. These are also references to years Godzilla films were released. In this case, Godzilla Raids Again, Son of Godzilla, Terror of Mechagodzilla, and Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah in that order. Plus, this shot of Ghidorah does seem to have some biblical undertones within it, since Ghidorah is compared to that of a false god/king, as a cross is placed before it. These religious undertones are more present in Godzilla the Planet Eater. Alan Jonah references Daniel 6:21, which reads, "Long live the king." Ghidorah's call does end up disturbing Skull Island. However, it is confirmed that Kong is unaffected by it, as he shows no concern for the natural order. Dr. Brooks from Kong's Skull Island makes a cameo and is seen along with Dr. Ling, who is the twin sister of Dr. Chen, which of course is a reference to the Shobijin, and is also the MonsterVerse's version of that, since these twins do have a connection to Mothra, as confirmed by Michael Dougherty, but more on that later. As Mothra hatches from her cocoon, we see a Tokyo SOS-esque shot of the moon with some sparks. We also hear Mothra's theme as well as her Showa cry. The design on Mothra's wings are confirmed to be based on Godzilla's eyes, which ties the two as guardians of the Earth, and her wings can also emit bioluminescent rays. Back to the whole twin situation, Dr. Chen grew up on Infant Island, the home of Mothra in the older films, and is supposed to be where she originated from back in 1961, which is also the year the first Mothra film was released. There are 4 generations of Dr. Chen's lineage, which consists of twins, much like how there are 4 generations of the Shobijin, being the ones from the Showa series, Godzilla vs. Mothra, Tokyo SOS, and Final Wars. Also, it is explained how the origins of the Titans are reminiscent to that of GMK, in which they have strong ties to the Earth which lasted for centuries, and they were even worshipped and are tied with legends such as dragons, the Phoenix, and so on. Even GMK director Shusuke Kaneko acknowledges these similarities. However, the one thing that is different is that King Ghidorah is heavily implied to be extraterrestrial, an alien if you will, much like his Showa incarnation. Back in Kong's Skull Island, Bill Randa says that there will never be a more screwed up time in Washington, but alas, Washington gets really screwed up. There was also the moment where he says that people who believe in aliens are nuts, and yet an alien space dragon ends up finding its way to Earth. One thing that caught me by surprise was how they used footage from the San Diego Comic-Con 2012 Godzilla 2014 mood piece that was presented to not only Hall H, but to executives at Warner Brothers to try and get some backing on the film. Rodan bows to Ghidorah, acknowledging him as the Alpha, a relationship seen in numerous animals like dogs, gorillas, and so on. Pandora's box is referenced in the context that the presence of Ghidorah unleashed all kinds of monsters around the world. The world always belonged to them is a variation of lines spoken by Brooks and Randa from Skull Island. Mothra is officially known as the Queen of the Monsters in this universe. As the Mothra theme plays again, she makes calls similar to that of a whale as she is starting to communicate with Godzilla, which is also referred to as a song, like the Mothra song. Godzilla is reviving Gamera style at the Earth's core, which builds upon Dr. Serizawa's theory from 2014. It's also noted that Godzilla has to move lower into the ground to chase the Earth's natural resources of radiation. The symbiotic relationship between Mothra and Godzilla is one that Serizawa hopes to form with Godzilla. Ghidorah is able to cause Category 6 hurricanes, which goes back to him being able to create storms the world has never experienced. Mothra seeking Godzilla's help to fight Ghidorah is reminiscent to when she does the same to him and Rodan back in Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster.
Oh, Godzilla, what terrible language!
We see Serizawa's watch again, which belonged to his father and is stuck on the time Hiroshima was bombed in 1945. The Hollow Earth is explored a bit more in this film as we see an ancient undersea temple, which could be a reference to Atlantis or the Mu Empire from the Toho film Atragon, but Godzilla is worshipped instead of Manda. There's a callback to Fort Brody as there's a vessel named the USS Brody fending off Titans. And unlike 2014, the city where the climax is being held is evacuated. This film is also the first time the "My God, Zilla" joke is used, which is a terrible but popular joke among the fanbase. And here's a very interesting one. Much like in the original Godzilla, Dr. Serizawa sacrifices his life to save the Earth. But this time it's reversed. In the original, Godzilla is killed, but here Godzilla is revived by a nuclear missile, with Serizawa's last words to him being "Goodbye, old friend," which is also the name of the track that plays in the scene. This is also one of the more rare occasions where a human actually touches Godzilla, most notable instance being Sujimori in Godzilla vs. Megaguirus. And during Serizawa's sacrifice, a choir is heard, much like how Prayer for Peace plays at the end of the first Godzilla. And as the missile goes off, we see a statue of Pazuzu from The Exorcist.
And during the explosion outside Godzilla's temple, you see a skeleton that resembles Anguirus. For legal reasons, this isn't Anguirus, but Michael Dougherty has since confirmed that it is supposed to be the same design.
Also, Godzilla is powered up by a nuclear missile and emerges from underwater as the Godzilla theme plays, much like in Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah. Godzilla and Mark both learn mutual respect in this moment as it completes the arc of Mark, I swear I did not mean for that to rhyme, and builds on Godzilla's, with Godzilla remembering him, demonstrating his intelligence. Mark shouting "Nobody move" in Godzilla's presence is likely a callback to Jurassic Park. The key to the orca being a mixture of Godzilla and bioacoustics ties everything together as it represents the key to coexistence. Ghidorah is referred to as Moe, Larry, and Curly, the Three Stooges, which references the monster's multiple personalities. Serizawa's "let them fight" line is mentioned, but this time, instead of letting them fight, Mark suggests that it's time that they join the fight. Ghidorah's iconic "bitty bitty bitty" is heard as he flies to Boston. Whenever Ghidorah fires his gravity beams, the middle head fires first. Godzilla fires his atomic breath in the dark at King Ghidorah and cuts to him making an entrance is very similar to his entrance in Terror of Mechagodzilla. The Battle in Boston track mixes together all the other monster themes from the film. Godzilla's Shore War is what kicks off the climax. Here Godzilla fights alongside the military, which is kinda like Godzilla vs. Hedorah, but that time it was only with those electricity panels. The original Godzilla march is heard as the military march, much like how it was in the first Godzilla. Godzilla is referred to as a lizard, like in Godzilla Final Wars, and Godzilla was an actual lizard back in 1998. Godzilla is so juiced from that missile Serizawa detonated that he will reach critical mass, a term from the video game Godzilla Unleashed, which also refers to Godzilla going into meltdown, like in Godzilla vs. Destroya, as well as one of the early drafts of Godzilla 2014. Mark has two moments that call back to the film's opening scene, which basically comes down to him looking for his child in the middle of a Godzilla fight. Ghidorah definitely acts more serpentine-like during his bout with Godzilla, even wrapping his heads around him like a snake. Dr. Chen seemingly summons Mothra to battle as the monster comes in, webbing two of Ghidorah's heads to a skyscraper. Rodan comes in to battle Mothra, marking the first time the two monsters ever fought. Godzilla tackles Ghidorah through said skyscraper as it collapses on them both. This time, Godzilla is able to take it. Ghidorah powers himself up via power generator like in Kong back in 1962's King Kong vs. Godzilla, and releases an insane amount of lightning from his wings like in Rebirth of Mothra 3. Godzilla's scars from the prequel comic Godzilla Aftershock are present. When Mothra stabs Rodan with her stinger, he makes the same noise the female Muto makes when Godzilla bites her shoulder back in 2014. Ghidorah lifts Godzilla from the ground like in the Planet Eater. Godzilla falling from the sky does resemble the Halo jump from 2014 a bit. Ghidorah biting down onto Godzilla to drain his energy is reminiscent to when Kaiser Ghidorah did the same in Final Wars and is also like the Planet Eater. Mothra sacrificing herself to help an ally is common in the older films, mainly in GMK and Tokyo SOS, but here it's a parallel to GMK, but the roles are reversed. Instead of sacrificing herself for Ghidorah, she sacrifices herself for Godzilla. When Mothra explodes, her silhouette forms an angel. Mothra's energy flowing into Godzilla as a means to revive him is very similar to when Rodan did the same back in Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2. This of course results in Fire Godzilla, the MonsterVerse's version of Burning Godzilla, in which Godzilla is glowing orange, which is also like in the anime trilogy. Earlier, Dr. Chen says that dragons often bring redemption, and later Emma is redeemed as she basically gets herself killed by Ghidorah to save the other main characters later on. And on top of that, the track that plays is titled Redemption. Upon death, Emma quotes Jonah Allen's Long Live the King line, but this time it is referring to Godzilla rather than Ghidorah. Godzilla also has his nuclear pulse from the 90s, and you can also hear Mothra's cry and see her wings each time it is released. Godzilla's fatality this time around consists of destroying Ghidorah's wings like in 1991, then his right and left heads, and stomps on his chest with his nuclear pulse. Then wrestles around with the middle head in his mouth, destroying it with atomic breath. Ghidorah's middle head being the last thing to remain alive demonstrates the power of his regenerative capabilities, which is similar to that of a rattlesnake. This moment is followed up with Bradley Whitford saying, "Good thing he's on our side," with Dr. Chen adding, "For now," which does seem to foreshadow that Godzilla will be on his own terms in the future. We then see all these titans bowing down to Godzilla as he lets out a roar, for he is King of the Monsters. The end. But wait, there's more.
The montage that plays is very similar to both the intro for Godzilla 2014 and Kong Skull Island. The Hollow Earth civilizations are proof that there was a point when humans had relationships with the Titans. There's evidence that people have been able to develop telepathic communication with certain Titans. There is a returning highlights reel from Godzilla 2014. We see clips from both versions of the Project Monarch montage. The first news article that we see is Titans returning to natural environments, which just details Monarch's history and establishment in 1946 after the sinking of the USS Lawton at the hands of Godzilla in 1943. It continues to mention the attempts to kill Godzilla through 1954, but the big takeaway is that the Titans are headed home. They are not destroying cities, they are headed home. Monarch has supposedly released 60 years worth of documentation on the Titans, so now everyone knows everything about them. During the montage, we see footage of moths flying around, hinting that Mothra will return. The next article we see says Rodan nesting in volcano north of Fiji. So there you go, it's pretty similar to what he does in the 1964 movie Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster. The article talks about Truman funding Monarch in response to Godzilla destroying the Lawton, and then it continues to mention the Godzilla attacks and the 2014 Muto attacks. It also talks about San Francisco's downfall. Mysterious rainforest blooms in Sahara Desert. So this article is clearly referencing the effects of some Titan passing through or under the Sahara Desert. It mentions the economic problems associated with trying to fix the world in this post-kaiju world, essentially. I mean, everything's destroyed now. It talks about the public now viewing Godzilla as a hero, and they start to trust him. It mentions how the Titans have specific radiation that restores life rather than kills it. There is also a little snippet about giant pandas starting to pop up in China, and apparently these giant pandas are so popular that they have brought in $3.4 million worth of tourist revenue, and there has been a big economic boom in China as a result. It also talks about how 14 species have been taken off the endangered species list, as we'll see a little bit later. Monarch, decades of secrets revealed. Now Monarch is operating with full transparency. I think this might be a little sneaky Easter egg here. This article was written by Mike D. Hardy. That's a very very similar name to Mike Doherty. There is a new head of Monarch that is confirmed, implying that Serizawa was the previous head of Monarch. And Godzilla's path through Pacific brings life back to reefs, restoring fish population. Monarch confirms ancient Greek origins of squid-like titan known as Scylla. This article is written by The Guardian. Most of these do come from real-world outlets. Godzilla has apparently had to defend cities against multiple titans who aren't necessarily bowing down the way he would like them to. Behemoth Titan restores deforest regions in Amazon. Scylla slows ice melt in Antarctica, stabilizing sea levels. An ecosystem heal. 14 species taken off endangered list. Ancient rivalries between titans suspected. It's setting up the grudge match between Godzilla vs. Kong. There's a little article written about how Godzilla's been spotted off a cruise ship in Cuba. Kind of a reference to the original 1954 movie where Godzilla appears off the side of a cruise ship and freaks everyone out. Titan waste could be vital energy source. This is probably a Pacific Rim reference, if anything, because they talk a lot about that in Pacific Rim. Are prehistoric plants new superfood? This article is all about the potential to end world hunger using these prehistoric plants. Echolocation is seen returning. This is being brought back from Godzilla 2014. Seismic disturbances reported on Skull Island. New titans drawn to Skull Island. Monarch boosts forces around Skull Island. The island has become supposedly unstable in some way or another. The island is speculated to be the birthplace of all titans. The public is worried about weaponized titans. Monarch denies building a mech on the island, a potential reference to Mechanicong, Mechagodzilla, or maybe even Mecha King Ghidorah, who I think we got a hint to in the post-credit scene. Dr. Lee Rosa says there is no Mecha Kaiju. He does talk about how there have been attempts to create Bio Kaiju before that failed, a potential setup for someone like Biollante to enter the monsterverse. Monarch finds massive egg. It's speculated to be the second Mothra. An article written by Steve Martin, which is a great Easter egg to Godzilla 1956, you know, Godzilla King of the Monsters. Steve Martin was Raymond Burr's character. Monarch to explore Hollow Earth. So they're looking for the origins of the Titans. We see lots of footage from Kong Skull Island return, and then you finally end with the article, What's a King to a God? Making fun of essentially the fans. It's making fun of the fans who always use that dumb quote to try and be like, how can King Kong even fight Godzilla? We see a cave painting representing Godzilla and Kong fighting. It also is a really cool way to tie it back to the ending of Kong Skull Island.
And all of this is happening while Serge Tankian's cover of Blue Oyster Cult's Godzilla plays. As for the rolling credits, Godzilla, Mothra, Rodan, and King Ghidorah are credited as themselves. Uncut versions of the Godzilla Mothra themes play, and the film is in memory of Yoshimitsu Banno and Haruo Nakajima. Now for the post-credits. The book Brave New World is mentioned. In this scene, we see Jonah Allen and his crew obtaining the severed left head of Ghidorah from the battle in Mexico. Now for some other stuff. Godzilla King of the Monsters technically marks the first Godzilla film in this new Reiwa era. The title is a reference to the US re-edit of the original Godzilla titled Godzilla King of the Monsters. The working title for this film was Fathom, like the Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, one of the films that inspired the original Godzilla. The clip you see in the trailer where Madison tries to reach Monarch is cut from the film. The Ghidorah theme in this film has motifs similar to that of the title themes from Terror of Mechagodzilla. This movie has the same monster lineup as Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, and finally, this film was released on Akira Fukubi's birthday, May 31st. Ugh, geez. Michael Dougherty really went all out in this film. And I'm sure there are plenty more D-Man and I missed, but that's pretty much all we could dig up. Feel free to comment anything you notice. Anyway, that's it for this video. I would like to give a very special thank you to D-Man1954 for being a part of this collaboration. Feel free to check out my TeePublic after the video.
Thank you guys all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I'll see you guys next time. D-Man, out.